This is Behind the Headlines, with behind-the-scenes analysis on issues affecting Pennsylvanians, sponsored by the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. Now, here's your host.
Hi, from Philadelphia to Erie and from Scranton to Pittsburgh, it's Behind the Headlines. I'm Charlie Greenawalt, the Senior Fellow of the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy, and Mara is on assignment this week. But this week we have a very special show for you. It's about the coronation of King Charles III. And joining us for this show will be our Susquehanna board member and former vice chair of the English Democrats Party in the United Kingdom, is Christine Constable. Christine, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Charlie. A delight to be here.
Well, it's delightful to have you back again. We did a show after the Queen's funeral, and we thought it was only fitting to do one on the coronation. Many Americans forget how closely tied we are to the United Kingdom and how our two countries work in concert on most matters around the globe, and our cooperation is essential for world peace and world progress. But I guess I want to start out today by asking you, what is a coronation?
Well, it's evolved, let's put it that way. I mean, I think it's gone on for hundreds and hundreds of years, all the way back to the pharaohs. They had similar kinds of celebrations. But I think in British terms, it's evolved very much to make sure that people understand who is the king. And in a kingdom with many different princes, with many different parts of the country, there's always somebody who wants to be seen as the king and the one who's actually on top dog. And as far as I can see, I mean, we've had it for over 1,000 years. Probably since 1959, there's been a coronation at Westminster Abbey. And the whole process really is just to prove this one single person is the true and valid king, and to create a ceremony about it so that nobody is in any doubt that this is the king. So anybody else who tries to say they're the king, they were not the ones who actually had a coronation. They didn't go through the service. They weren't at Westminster Abbey. So only is king. Yeah.
Is there a particular set of protocols or a certain history that this ceremony itself is based on, Christine?
Yes, it's the embodiment of delivering the king to the people. Really, there is the first, which is the most important, which is the recognition. And so the new monarch will be presented to all the people, all the lords and dignitaries. Having gone through down the ages, the monarch will be presented to them. This is the person, this is the new monarch. And then there will be a swearing of an oath that the new monarch will swear to his people that he will be there to support the laws, the religion of the Church of England. And then there is the religious aspect of the coronation, which is anointing of that person with holy oil, because you know the monarch is very much God's person, and so they are trying to make the connection between the monarch and religion. And the anointing of oil, it goes back to biblical times when, you know, very important people were sort of explained in this particular way, that they became the very special person they were through the anointing process. And then there's the investiture, where the new monarch will be given a golden robe and the gift of the crown. So the crown is put upon their head, and then that sort of is a final mark to say this is the new monarch. And then the monarch is helped to the new throne by all the dignitaries around. So some of the lords, some of the priests and other dignitaries all assist the new monarch to the throne. And then everybody there pays homage to the new monarch, and we will see Prince William paying homage to his father, that he will be what is called his liege man for the rest of his father's reign. And that is a very important process in a way, because what it's trying to say is, William is promising not to try and take Charles from the throne while he is alive. He will work with him and support him and be somebody that the new king can rely on.
Mm-hmm. Something that we've heard about a great deal here in the States is the Stone of Destiny, or the Stone of Scone, that comes from Scotland. We were wondering here, what is the Stone of Destiny, and what role does it play in the coronation, Christine?
Well, it is a very contentious issue, because the Stone of Scone is a Scottish stone, and that was used for the different kingdoms of Scotland, because Scotland wasn't always just Scotland. It had little princedoms going way, way back, from the Pictish tribes, coming forward. And the stone was a ceremonial place where the kings of Scotland were crowned. And one of our kings went up to Scotland and decided that actually he would like the stone to be brought back to England. And following a rather unpleasant battle, the stone was then brought down to England, and a special chair was made for it, so that the stone was almost held captive beneath the new throne. And so that is, it's a little bit like, if you look at the coat of arms of Great Britain, you have Scotland, with the prancing horse with the chain round its neck. And that's very much how a lot of the English monarchs felt about Scotland. You had to sort of be standing on it or have it chained to you in some way. So the stone is very much a ceremonial position underneath the throne to say, yep, you're underneath me and I'm sitting on you.
Well, it's interesting, because the Stone of Scone that Edward I took away from Scotland was in Westminster Abbey for centuries. In fact, I saw it there once. And then Tony Blair, in a political bid to attract Scottish votes in the next general election for the Labour Party, returned a Stone of Scone to Scotland to get those Scottish votes. And by golly, it worked for him. He won the election, didn't he, Christine?
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Well, it has become very political. I mean, it's clear even at the moment that the Scot, Alex Salmond, who was a previous leader of the Scottish National Party, was not very happy that the stone was coming down to London, because actually it does reside in Scotland most of the time and only comes down now to England for coronations. And as Charles will be the first one in this century, unlikely to be seen in England much more in the future, until, of course, William becomes king. But yeah, we've had it in England since 1296, and it was Edward I who had invaded Scotland and took the stone back. And yeah, that's the history we've inherited, really. So if we didn't have the stone, we'd have a big hole in the bottom of the throne. So, we need it back for this ceremony.
Well, Christine, who is going to actually conduct the coronation? Who is the master of ceremonies, so to speak?
Yeah, well, it's not just one person. I mean, it's an absolutely massive operation, and it's been going on, for some time. And I understand that this coronation has been in planning since 2002, and there's been a huge committee of people who've been managing it, including at the same time the same committee who was managing the Queen's funeral. But the officiating person will be Justin Welby, who is the Archbishop of Canterbury, and the Archbishop of Canterbury is the most senior cleric in the Church of England. and he'll be conducting the core religious parts of the service. But the way, as far as I can see, I mean, Charles has got lots and lots of different people involved in the coronation, and I'm sure quite a bit of it will be surprises. There's lots of friends, lots of people who are involved in charities, lots of, a huge cross-section of people he's asked to attend the coronation. Although, oddly, there's only 2,000 spaces, so it's had to be very carefully chosen, the people who do attend.
Well, it's interesting, the Archbishop of Canterbury, the head of the Anglican Church, plays such an important role in the coronation, but yet he is crowning Charles, who now will be the defender of the faith and actually head of the Church of England. Could you comment for a moment about the relationship between those two and this controversy, whether or not Charles is going to be defender of the faith or the faiths, as he said in some public messages?
Well, I think first and foremost, the monarch is head of the Church of England, so that's why Justin Welby is conducting all of this, because it is largely a ceremonial and religious process that he's going through to become head of the Church of England. But I agree with you. I mean, from a very early stage, Charles has always made it absolutely clear that he sees his role not just as Church of England, but defender of all faiths. And actually, it isn't quite as outrageous as you would imagine. I think Britain as a country has become very accepting of equality and religious equality. And so I think that Charles felt it very uncomfortable to just be talking about, the Church of England, when in fact we are a multi-faith society, and he didn't want to let anybody feel that they were not equally regarded. And so I think it's a fine line, but I mean, the Church of England also have a lot of interfaith work that they do, promote interfaith understanding and cooperation. So I don't really think it's that outrageous. It's more of a modern twist to accept that there are other religions and we can be tolerant of those religions.
Okay, we're going to take a break here, Christine, let you take a sip of water, and we'll be right back with you on Behind the Headlines. Hold on.
Behind the Headlines is brought to you as a public service by the Pennsylvania State Association of Township Supervisors, the largest, most influential municipal association in the Commonwealth. Since 1921, PSATS has been preserving and strengthening township government and securing greater visibility and involvement for townships in the state and federal political arenas. Covering 95% of Pennsylvania's land mass, townships represent 5.5 million residents, more than any other type of political subdivision in Pennsylvania. Additional underwriting provided by the Worrell Corporation Foundation, based in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, by the Edward H. and Jeannie Arnold Foundation, and by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business. Behind the Headlines is also supported as a public service by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Visit pahighwayinfo.org.
Hi, welcome back to Behind the Headlines. On this second segment of our show, Christine Constable, who's a board member of Susquehanna Valley Center, and again, who was the former vice chair of the English Democrats Party, and actually one of the leading businesswomen in the United Kingdom for many years, is joining us to talk about the coronation of King Charles III. Christine, wanted also to ask you, of course, a very important part of the King's domain and responsibilities is what is called the Commonwealth of Nations. Could you tell our viewers very quickly what the Commonwealth is, and then what role do they play in this? What role will they play in this coronation?
Well, it originally started out, the Commonwealth, as being a former colonies of the British Empire. But as time's gone on, some countries who were never actually members of the British Empire have actually asked if they could join the Commonwealth. I think the idea of it really was that when Britain withdrew from the Commonwealth, it wanted to keep their relationships and the cooperation and the trade going. And so they reinvented itself as the Commonwealth, where all the nations involved are really on equal footing. Now, a lot of the countries who left the British Empire left under Queen Elizabeth's reign. And Queen Elizabeth and her mother, indeed, were instrumental in creating the Commonwealth of Nations. And they would be based in London, and there would be lots of opportunities for trips and visits, and would still work closely with the British government, and if they needed aid or help or things like this was the object of the exercise. I sort of just we were all speaking English, and it was sort of a way of developing and keeping the Anglosphere alive. And then the Commonwealth sort of it morphed into a very more democratic organisation, but that when she passed away as she was head of the Commonwealth, whether Charles could become head of the Commonwealth, because actually everybody could become head of the Commonwealth. It didn't actually have to be Charles, but the Queen did ask that question, and before he passed away, they did agree that they would give it to Charles. It's interesting, but I think part of the reason that they may have said that was that it's a lot more fun for some of these countries come to Britain and coming to the palace and meeting everybody than it might be in some other countries, and there's a lot of benefits for coming to Britain. Well, part of that, a small part of it, might have been, why they did that.
Mm-hmm. You said a moment ago that there were 2,000 slots. So I'm so there are 2,000 guests that are going to be there. How did one wrangle an invitation to this event? Who was getting an invitation and who wasn't?
Well, it's a very difficult choice because, I mean, of course, you've got some that would have to come would be foreign royalty. And so they would be chosen. Queen Camilla's family, UK political leaders, MPs and peers, and only some, not all, a selection of the British nobility. And then you'd have foreign heads of state, and obviously they would have to come. So we've got a huge list here, and I notice on the list it says US President Biden will not be in attendance, but the First Lady Jill Biden will lead a US delegation to the coronation. So there's quite a few foreign heads of state coming. There is some religious representatives, there will be some celebrities there, and then there will be a number of people who hold ceremonial roles who are necessary for that whole coronation process to take place. But it was a very hand-picked group because in news sort of coming up to the coronation would be individuals who just got a letter through the post, sometimes because of a personal connection they had with Charles or Camilla, or something strange or marvelous that had happened to them at some point. And he has clearly gone through it with a very careful selection process to whittle it down just to 2,000. And I do know that there are some close members of the royal family who have not been invited. So he had to make quite a lot of decisions to get that 2,000 in.
Well, since you bring up members of the family, let me ask you first, what role will William play in this coronation, Christine?
Well, I think William will actually be very close to his father throughout, and I think he'll probably be very close to the seats and the thrones. I don't know exactly the role that he'll play, but I do know that he will be swearing his oath of allegiance to his father. So I should imagine he'll be right in the centre of it, which sadly will be in contrast to Harry, who I don't think, as far as I can tell, has any significant role in this process at all, and in fact may just be sitting some rows back in a seat. So that's just the way it goes. Unfortunately, it's always the next in line who would be up front, and that isn't Harry.
Yes. Does the British public believe that Harry and Meghan, particularly Harry, will ever become a working royal again?
Well, I mean, obviously, never say never, but one of the things I would say, I was having a look at a YouGov opinion poll the other day, and I'm afraid Prince Harry's positive rating at 23% and his negative rating is at 66%. Which doesn't bode very well. I think his wife is at 20% and positive, and negative at 67%. So unfortunately, the British public are not really embracing them perhaps quite as much as when they first got married. So, you know, why that is, I'm sure we can all draw our own conclusions. But with regards, if you're interested in this, I mean, with regards to Charles, his positivity rating is 46%, and the negativity rating is 42%. So it's a bit of a 50-50. But if you compare Charles's positivity rating with Prince William is nearly 60%, as against other at 46%. So, you know, his son at the moment is supported by the public. I mean, Camilla as well, her positivity rating is 35% and rating is 49%. And this is a problem, because it's a problem for her, because obviously she has a lot to demonstrate, and that will be demonstrated once she becomes queen. So we'll just have to see whether those figures change in the future. But certainly at the moment, both of them have.
This coronation makes Camilla the queen. Is that not correct? How is she being viewed in the public these days?
I think originally the idea of Camilla being queen went down very badly, and so they used the suffix consort as a way of kind of softening her role. She wasn't actually a pure queen, she was a consort to the king, and so she would be called queen consort. But I think it was very clear Charles never wanted that to be the case, because if a queen consort would not have the same political power and prestige as a queen in her own right. And Charles has asked that the consort be dropped, and that they ascend the throne almost on equal terms as king and queen, much like Queen Elizabeth II's mother and father, who were also king and queen. So yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, I think that things have improved. You know, the public's view of Camilla has changed to the positive over the years, but of course, you know, Princess Diana has a very special place in a lot of Britain's hearts, and it's a bit of a tough pill to swallow.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're talking about the perception of and the role of the individual royals in this coronation, but I guess we should take a step back and ask how the British public view the coronation as a whole. And will the coronation build support for the monarchy, or will it not make a difference, Christine?
Well, it's very difficult, because I've had a look at a few of the opinion polls, and it's clear that younger people have a different view to the monarchy compared to older, more traditional. And so a lot will depend on how they execute the role of monarch, in terms of whether they can win trust and interest in the youngsters. I mean, I have to say, from my own point of view, I was never a monarchist. Being a Democrat, I did find the whole thing a bit anathema to a democratic modern state. However, the older I've become, the more I've sort of understood the special role that it plays, because it's a kind of substructure on which the whole of society is linked together, through our various organizations, professional organizations that often have patronage by the royal family. It's a kind of rich tapestry that weaves the country together, and it also has the benefit of not having a huge amount of politics involved in it, and also, like with the Queen, who sadly is no longer with us, it provides a degree of continuity that politicians simply cannot ever give. I mean, to give, say, 70 years like the Queen did of continuous service in a frontline role is a very rare thing for anybody to ever achieve. And that continuity, when your politicians fail you, at least you have the monarchy there as a backstop. As we saw in the past, we've had national disasters or problems, the monarchy has stood in and said, look, I'm here, I'm still here, and I'm looking after you and your interests. And soft power, a quiet word to contact to stop things happening that perhaps are desirable, or make things happen which perhaps are desirable. So there's a lot of benefits, and of course tourism and these fabulous palaces, which are not just museums, but these people actually live in them.
Well, elections come and elections go, but the monarch remains, and certainly in the midst of the Second World War, when the king went to the parts of London that had been bombed, it was quite a morale builder, wasn't it? And it was a great force for unification, wasn't it?
No, exactly. And I think there's a lot of affection for the royal family. And, even like looking at Charles's coronation here, there were a number of prayers which were designed for the coronation. And these were emblematic of Charles's interests, and they are dedication, constancy, religious freedom, his emphasis on charitable work, the environment, that he sees himself as a servant king, symbol of the nation, and head of the Commonwealth, and part of the Anglican Communion. So he spans a huge and rich and diverse area of social interest, as his mother did.
Well, Christine, unfortunately, the clock has been also a sovereign for us in this particular show, and we've run out of time. But we want to thank you again today for giving us a better understanding and an insight into the coronation. Thank you very much, and God save the King.
God save the King. My pleasure. Thank you, Charlie.
We will be back next week with a new show on Behind the Headlines. We'll see you then.